I was standing at the stove in my kitchen on a quiet Thursday morning, staring down at a small aluminum pot of boiling water. I had just dropped 4 large eggs into the water, and I was leaning against the counter, waiting for the timer to go off. I was 73 years old, and I was tired. Not just sleepy, but a deep structural kind of tired that settles into your bones when you feel like you are losing a fight against your own body. For 35 years, I managed the floor at a heavy logistics warehouse downtown. I carried massive crates, I pulled wooden pallets across concrete floors, and my body was thick, solid, and reliable. I never had to think about my legs holding me up. But lately, every morning when I stepped out of bed, my legs felt like they belonged to a much older, much frailer man. They felt thin. They felt shaky. And I was desperately trying to fix it the only way I knew how. Every man of my generation was taught the exact same rule about strength. If you want to build muscle, you eat protein. And the cheapest, most reliable protein on earth was supposed to be eggs. So I was eating them every single day. I boiled them. I scrambled them. I forced them down my throat until the smell of them made my stomach turn. I figured if I just put enough fuel into the tank, the engine would have to start running strong again. But the truth was, it was not working. I was chewing through all that heavy food, feeling constantly bloated and sluggish, but my jeans were still fitting looser around my thighs. The gap between my leg and the denim was growing. My balance was getting worse. I was doing everything I thought a man was supposed to do, but my body was quietly vanishing right in front of my eyes. The turning point happened later that same week. My daughter Megan came over to the house to help my wife Linda with some heavy boxes in the garage. Megan is an occupational therapist. She spends her entire professional life working with older folks, studying how our muscles degrade, and figuring out how to keep us strong enough to hold on to our independence. She walked into the kitchen, saw me peeling the shells off 3 hard-boiled eggs with a miserable look on my face, and she just shook her head. She pulled out a chair, sat down across from me, and told me the hard truth that nobody at the doctor's office had bothered to explain. She told me that I was trying to fuel a 73-year-old engine with 30-year-old gasoline. She explained a concept to me that completely changed how I looked at my own body. She called it anabolic resistance. She told me that when we cross over the age of 70, the actual muscle cells in our legs and arms build up a kind of armor. They stop answering the door. When you eat a heavy plate of eggs or meat, your stomach breaks it down, but when that protein floats through your bloodstream and knocks on the door of your muscle cells, the cells just ignore it. The lock is jammed. You can eat all the eggs in the world, but if the muscle refuses to absorb the protein, it just passes right through you as expensive waste. My legs were shrinking not because I was failing to eat protein, but because my body had completely lost the ability to convert that specific kind of heavy animal protein into actual physical strength. I sat there looking at the peeled eggs on my plate, realizing that my stubbornness was actively costing me my freedom. I asked her what I was supposed to do if the old rules did not work anymore. Megan reached into her purse, pulled out a small notepad, and wrote down a list. She told me that out of the thousands of edible plants in the world, researchers had quietly identified 5 incredibly specific things that possess the exact mechanical structure needed to completely bypass that armor in an aging muscle. She did not write down expensive powders. She did not write down medications. She wrote down 5 tiny, unassuming seeds. I will be honest with you, I actually laughed. I told her I was a grown man who worked on a loading dock, not a bird. But then she showed me the reading she had done. She showed me observations of elderly folks who had replaced their heavy morning eggs with these specific seeds, and the microscopic results were staggering. Their muscle fibers were physically thickening. Their foot stability was returning. These seeds contained completely different molecular keys that slipped right past the age-related roadblocks in the gut and went straight to work rebuilding the tissue. I want to share all 5 of these things with you today, exactly the way Megan taught them to me. I need you to pay incredibly close attention to the final one on this list because that is the single thing I now add to my breakfast every single morning, and it is the reason my doctor looked at my chart last month and asked me what on earth I was doing to my legs. The first thing Megan wrote on that pad was something I had always misunderstood. She told me to start eating quinoa. For years, Linda and I thought quinoa was just a grain like rice or oats. But Megan explained that it is actually a seed, and it holds a secret that makes it fundamentally different from almost any other plant on Earth. She told me that aging muscles need 9 very specific building blocks called essential amino acids to repair themselves. If even one of those blocks is missing, the muscle simply refuses to rebuild. Most plants only have a few of them, but quinoa has all 9. It is a complete, unbreakable chain of protein. But here is where the old school advice fails us. Megan told me that older folks often try to eat quinoa cold, thrown over a salad, and it ruins their stomach. The protective shell on that seed is too tough for a 70-year-old digestive system. She told me the absolute mandatory rule for making it work. I had to soak it in a bowl of warm water with a splash of apple cider vinegar overnight. That simple trick breaks down the hard, bitter coating. Then, instead of cooking it in plain water, I started simmering it in heavy bone broth until it was steaming hot. The heat completely changes the structure of the protein, making it incredibly soft and easy for an aging gut to absorb. I have a buddy named Arthur who was struggling so badly to maintain his weight that his doctor was getting worried. I told him about cooking the seed in broth. He started eating a warm bowl of it about 2 hours after he woke up, right when his muscles were the most depleted. Within a month, the hollow look in his cheeks started to fade, and he told me his legs felt solid under him again. The complete protein was finally getting through the door. But getting the protein through the door was only the first step. The second obstacle was the fact that the signals in my body telling my muscles to stay strong were fading away. That brings me to the second seed Megan showed me, and this one caught me completely off guard because I always thought of them as just something you throw in the trash in October. She told me to start eating pumpkin seeds. She explained that building muscle is not just about eating food. It is about hormones. When we are young, our bodies are flooded with the signals that command the muscle to grow. As we age, those signals dry up and the muscle simply packs its bags and leaves. Megan showed me that pumpkin seeds are absolutely loaded with a specific ratio of zinc, magnesium, and iron that acts like a biological spark plug for those fading signals. She told me about men in their 70s who added just 3 tablespoons of these seeds to their daily routine and saw their natural strength signals jump drastically in just 2 months. It was giving them the recovery power they thought they had lost forever. But again, she warned me about the trap. If you eat them completely raw, your stomach will fight them. They contain natural compounds that block digestion. I started taking a handful of them and roasting them in the oven for 15 minutes just to break those blockers down. Then I took an old coffee grinder we kept in the pantry and ground them up into a fine green powder. By grinding them, I destroyed the surface area that makes them hard to digest. I started stirring 2 spoonfuls of that powder into a bowl of warm oatmeal. But I learned very quickly never to eat them at the same time as my morning coffee or a glass of milk, because the calcium completely blocks the body from absorbing that precious zinc. I ate them on their own, and for the first time in years, I stopped waking up feeling like my body had completely drained itself overnight. The third seed was something I had never even heard of before, but it turned out to be the greatest defense I have ever found against the deep, chronic aches in my joints. Megan told me to buy hemp seeds. Now, I did not understand why a man my age needed something like that, but she explained the mechanics of what happens inside an aging muscle. She told me that old muscles are constantly fighting a quiet, burning fire of inflammation. That internal rust is what makes you feel stiff when you stand up, and as long as that fire is burning, the muscle refuses to grow or repair itself. Hemp seeds contain an incredibly rare protein structure that is almost entirely identical to the proteins already floating in your own blood. Because it matches your body so perfectly, your stomach does not have to work to translate it. It just absorbs it instantly. But more importantly, they carry a heavy dose of specific fatty acids that act like a cold bucket of water on that internal fire. I have a neighbor named Jim who used to limp down his driveway every morning because his knees and hips were so inflamed. I gave him a bag of these seeds and told him to sprinkle a spoonful over his meals, making sure never to heat them up because heat destroys the delicate oils. About 3 weeks later, I watched Jim walk all the way down to the corner stop sign without a single hitch in his step. He told me the deep, grinding ache was just gone. By putting out the fire, his body was finally able to use its energy to rebuild his legs. Before I tell you about the last two seeds on this list, the ones that completely replaced my morning eggs and actively forced my muscles to stop shrinking, I want to pause for a second. I am sitting here talking to you from my own porch, sharing exactly what I lived through, but I need to know what you are dealing with right now. If you are sitting there listening to me, I want you to go down into the comments and tell me exactly how old you are, and tell me if you feel like the food you are eating is actually making you stronger, or if it just sits like a heavy rock in your stomach. Do your legs still feel thin no matter how much heavy protein you try to force down? I read what you write. Knowing exactly what your body is refusing to digest helps me figure out what we need to talk about next, because none of us should be fighting this decline alone. That brings me to the fourth seed. This is the one that changed how my body handled its energy, and it is something ancient folks used to survive long journeys. I am talking about chia seeds. When Megan first showed them to me, they just looked like tiny black specks. But she took a spoonful of them, dropped them into a glass of water, and told me to watch. 10 minutes later, those tiny hard seeds had completely transformed. They had absorbed the water and created a thick, heavy gel. She explained that this gel is the secret to stopping the muscle breakdown that happens in older adults between meals. When you eat eggs, your body gets a fast spike of protein, and then a few hours later, the tank is completely empty again. When the tank is empty, your body starts eating your own leg muscles to survive. But when you eat those seeds, after they have turned into a gel, they coat the inside of your stomach. They create a slow, steady, continuous drip of protein and hydration that lasts for hours. They feed the muscle constantly, never allowing the tank to hit zero. My wife Linda started making this for us every afternoon. She would soak a couple of spoonfuls in some coconut water for 20 minutes until it turned into a pudding. I started eating a small bowl of it between lunch and dinner, and that awful, shaky, weak feeling I used to get at 4 o'clock in the afternoon completely disappeared. My muscles were finally getting a steady paycheck instead of a single, unreliable bonus. But all of this was just setting the stage for the final seed on the list. The number one thing that completely broke through the armor of my aging muscles. This is the seed that outperformed heavy animal protein so drastically in the research that it forced me to permanently throw away my routine of boiling eggs. I am talking about flax seeds. Megan sat me down and explained the most dangerous enemy of an aging body. It is a stress hormone called cortisol. As we get older, our bodies produce too much of it, especially first thing in the morning. Cortisol is like acid to your muscles. It actively tears them down. But she showed me that flax seeds contain an incredibly unique compound that actually hunts down that cortisol, binds to the hormone receptors in your muscle cells, and physically blocks the damage. It essentially hijacks the hormone that is trying to destroy you and forces the muscle to grow instead. But there was a massive catch, and it is the reason most folks who try to eat flax seeds get absolutely no benefit from them. If you eat the seed whole, it is like swallowing a tiny pebble. It passes through your entire digestive system completely intact, and you absorb nothing. You have to break the vault to get the treasure. I bought a dedicated coffee grinder just for this. Every single morning, I take 2 spoonfuls of whole flax seeds and I grind them down into a fresh, oily powder. You cannot buy it pre-ground and leave it in the cupboard because the oils go rancid and die within days. You have to grind it fresh. I take that fresh powder, stir it into a glass of warm water, let it sit for 10 minutes to activate, and I drink it on a completely empty stomach the absolute second I wake up. I drink it right when my cortisol levels are at their absolute highest and most destructive. By putting that freshly ground seed into my body before anything else, I am actively shutting down the muscle wasting process before it even has a chance to start for the day. I remember the morning I realized that this entirely new way of feeding my body was actually working. I was out in the garage trying to move a heavy floor jack across the concrete. 6 months earlier, trying to brace my legs and push that heavy piece of steel would have made my thighs tremble, and I would have felt a deep, exhausted ache in my knees. But this time, I planted my boots on the floor, dropped my hips, and pushed. The jack rolled heavily across the concrete. My legs did not shake. My thighs felt dense. The hollow, frail feeling that had been quietly terrifying me in the bathroom mirror was gone. By stepping away from the heavy, brutal animal proteins that my aging stomach could no longer break down, and leaning into the precise molecular keys hidden inside these tiny seeds, I had actually started feeding my muscles again. The slow drip gel of the chia, the fire-extinguishing oils of the hemp, the hormone spark of the pumpkin, the complete chain of the quinoa, and the absolute armor of the freshly ground flax. I had stopped fighting my aging body and started giving it the exact tools it was begging for. If you are looking in the mirror right now and watching your own legs slowly get thinner, despite forcing yourself to eat heavy meals of eggs and meat that just make you miserable, I want you to hear me clearly. Your muscles have not given up on you. They are just locked behind a door that your current food cannot open. You do not need to go to the store and buy all 5 of these things today. Just pick one. Maybe you buy a coffee grinder and a bag of flax seeds tonight, and you grind up 2 spoonfuls tomorrow morning. Give your body the building blocks it can actually recognize, digest, and absorb, and you will be absolutely amazed at how quickly it remembers how to be strong. I'm going to stay right here on this porch, continuing to figure these things out, continuing to test what works in my own kitchen, and sharing every single step of it with you. Because a man needs his physical strength to hold on to his independence, and we have entirely too much living left to do to let our muscles quietly fade away. Take care of your foundation, listen to what your digestion is telling you, and I will be here talking to you again very soon.